Thank you. Okay, so my name is Paul Brooks. I've worked my entire working life in manufacturing automation. Have any of you ever driven a car? Yeah, probably touched by our electronics and software. Anyone ever drunk a beer? Yeah, probably touched by our electronics and software. Anything that is manufactured, including energy, is handled by industrial automation components, which is where I've spent my working life. I'm here representing the Margo project, where I sit on the steering committee, and Margo has a very cool logo and a very boring objective. Margo is about the distribution and deployment of software in industrial premises. It has no interest whatsoever in what the software does. It has no interest in functionality. It is about distribution and deployment. And why do we care about that? Because it is really, really, really difficult for our customers in many cases to get their software up and running in premises, and that gets in the way of what my company cares about, which is selling software that does something. So, what is industrial automation? Because really, we are not about software. I'm here to talk about open source software, but my industry is not about software. I'm just going to highlight some of the key factors of my industry. First one, we are very frequently a very, very highly regulated industry. If you are injecting a drug into your arm, I think you care that it has been manufactured in a very, very, very repeatable and predictable manner. Anything which can change that repeatability, anything that can change that predictability is a bad thing. And we are not allowed to make any changes that could affect that repeatability. Another aspect of our industry is that it's very often isolated. We cannot assume permanent connections. There was a lot of discussion this morning about cutting off the cut-off between the continents. But if you're putting an automated system on a ship, you have to assume infrequent connectivity. Another aspect of our industry is that it's a very, very high-speed industry. I spend my life talking about microseconds and talking about real-world actions which must happen in microseconds of the action to which they're reacting. We talk about critical infrastructure. Indeed, every one of my company's products, just about every one of all of my competitors' products, are used in critical infrastructure. If you're interested in the security of energy production, then you need to be concerned about the electronic components and the software that is driving that. And the other thing that I want to highlight is security. You know, I spend a lot of my time talking about cryptology, and I talk about certificates, and I talk about elliptic curves, but actually what my customers, what every one of you cares about in terms of security is that when you give your child a glass of orange juice, that orange juice is safe to drink. And that is the security that we have to deliver to our customers, and that is the reason that we care about cybersecurity. And then the final thing that I'll say is that the biggest challenge that faces our industry today is that we are an aging workforce. As an industry, we grew into maturity in the 1980s and the 1990s, which means that all of the pioneers of the industry have either recently retired or are retiring. Something else that's ironic about our industry is that we care an awful lot about open standards. We have an awful lot of open standards. Indeed, the number of open standards organizations that we have tells you that as an industry, we're not very good at standardizing. And you notice that Linux Foundation isn't on this list. To the best of my knowledge, the Margo project is the first project in industrial automation that has actually been run inside of the Linux Foundation. And I'll just share quickly an early observation that I have here. Every one of these organizations would benefit from a code-first approach. The attitude of code first, which is natural, which is native to the open source community, would enormously benefit all of these organizations as they do their top-down standard development with written interface specifications, with the assumption that coding will happen later and coding will all be done for profit. But we have found that we are able to build a more robust standard much faster because we started with the code. We didn't start with the written interface. The flip side is that most of these organizations have incredibly rigid conformance test policies. We care about interoperability. When my customer buys a system, they buy components from maybe 20 different companies which must integrate, which must work together reliably. And so all of these organizations have really strict conformance test practices which drive, which enforce interoperability so that the person who finds a problem isn't the user. So what is the vision of Margo? What Margo is going to do is to enable industrial applications to be published once and then to be distributed to a fleet of devices managed by a fleet of different end users with a number of different competing fleet managers deploying those applications and managing those devices. I'm not saying that this isn't a problem that's been solved in other industries. It's been solved in the automotive industry with the smart vehicle. We're using some of those skills. It's been used solved in the cellular industry. We haven't solved this problem in industrial automation. One of the reasons that we're coming to Linux Foundation is because of the experience that Linux Foundation have had solving this problem in other industries. And why are we solving this problem? Because it takes away friction from selling things that matter to our users. But something that we have to remember is that open source software isn't for free. In fact, open software is more expensive than proprietary software. If you do everything inside the confines of your own company, then there will be less money spent than doing it in an open, interoperable manner. So why do we care about open source software? First reason is that our customers want choice. Our customers actually want to be able to choose between competing vendors, and open source software makes it easier for us to compete. One of the reasons that it makes it easier for us to compete is because as businesses, what we want to be spending our money on, what we want to be focusing our development efforts on, isn't infrastructure. What we want to be investing in are differentiating capabilities. So this is the other thing that's important about open source software. It isn't commoditizing. Open source software should be a platform on which differentiation can then be built, because it's actually differentiation which is where real innovation happens. So the other thing that I will say clearly and openly is that when we set up the Margo project, we didn't go for an open source approach out of a matter of religious belief in open source. We did it because we came to the conclusion that it would be the most effective tactic for delivering and solving an infrastructure problem that none of our companies really wanted to spend money fixing. Because infrastructure isn't sexy. Infrastructure isn't anything that users want to buy. What they want to buy is differentiating capabilities. So what open source enables us to do was to have pure competitors in the marketplace pooling development expenses to solve a problem possibly in a more expensive way than it would cost any individual company to solve it on their own. But across each of the companies, for those companies to each spend less than they would solving it individually. It gave us a truly democratic and meritocratic base for software development. It meant that actually I was able to get some of the best practices from my competitors into this, and they were able to take advantage of some of my best practices. It grew the pool of skilled workers. It also allows new companies to enter the market. None of us like competition, but actually we're all made better by competition. And what this is doing is it's allowing new companies to enter the market to bring in new tactics. And as I said, Code First has made a huge difference for us. Code First is what is most unique about working in Linux Foundation compared to any of those other initiatives. And we have found that that has accelerated our velocity. It has caused acceleration in what we're doing, and it's actually made our conformance test, which is one of our best practices that we're bringing in, more robust. But it all has to be funded, and one of the ways that we have ensured that it's funded is that we have made sure that we understand exactly what value we are bringing to each of the stakeholders in the system. Obviously, the value that we're delivering to end users, but the value that is delivered to our own business managers, the value that is delivered to our own shareholders. We are essentially operating as a commercial open source software company with our pooled resources. Something else that we have, okay, I'll admit it, something that we fixed when we got it wrong the first time was we went away from a pure chaotic software development process to a disciplined development environment. Just because software is open source, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be professional about the way that you build it. Code first is good, but design first is better. We've taken advantage of agile software development processes so that developers are tasked with solving specific user stories by product owners. And then for people like I that should never, ever, ever look at software, should never be involved in code review, we then have demos at the end of each user story creation so that I can understand whether or not the core problem has been solved. And finally, as I said, conformance. We have a strict policy in Margo of trust but verify. We trust people to do the right thing, but we expect them to pass conformance test. Because actually, the people who are actually using the software, the people who are actually interacting with the software, have no idea how the software is written. They have no idea what the SBOM is. They understand how to make cookies. They understand how to make cars. And they need the software to interoperate first time. Final thing that we've done that, again, I don't see a whole lot of evidence of in our other Linux Foundation projects, is we have talked to our users. When I say our users, I mean the companies that make the cars, the companies that make the cookies. We validate that not only is the problem that we are trying to solve a problem that is worth solving, but we also validate that the way that we are solving that problem is going to be useful and valuable for them. It doesn't say that those users should be part of the development process, but they have to drive our priorities. Because if you ever read my LinkedIn profile, you'll see that it says, if we don't solve our customers' problems with everything that we do, then we fail in everything that we do. So, with that as the final thing that I'll say, I'll look forward to joining the panel, and I will hand over to the next speaker, who will hopefully have a different set of customer problems that they are able to talk about how they'll solve in Linux Foundation.